I'm Meredith Sumpter. I'm the CEO of FairVote and FairVote Action. We are national, nonpartisan nonprofits that work to advance election reforms that improve representation and accountable governance. And we're also the nation's lead on ranked choice voting. So I recognize we have sort of a setup here that if you're more comfortable moving your chair around so that you can see our panel here, we want to make this as welcoming and interactive as possible. Whatever makes you comfortable makes us comfortable. But I am delighted to welcome you here to discuss a reform that has been gaining momentum across the country, from Alaska to New York City, from cities across Utah to Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota, to Las Cruces and Santa Fe, New Mexico, and even here to Washington, D.C. The number of Americans with access to a ranked ballot has increased eightfold. In the last 9 years, we've had a fivefold increase in the number of jurisdictions using ranked choice voting in the last 9 years. Ranked choice voting is a simple and proven upgrade to our democracy. It gives voters more choice and greater say in who represents them. It delivers a majority winner without a costly, low turnout runoff election. And ranked choice voting is simple. Voters simply have the option of ranking their candidates in order of preference, first, second, third, and so on. If your first choice has no chance of winning, your ballot simply counts towards your backup choice. It's become one of the fastest growing election reforms in the nation because it works. It empowers voters and it solves for problems, including voters can rank their favorites without fear of spoiling or wasting their vote. More candidates can run without being told to wait their turn or that they'll risk splitting the vote. We see more women and candidates of color running and winning in ranked choice voting elections, a little bit of something that you'll hear about today. This is my favorite problem that ranked choice voting solves for. It actually makes our democracy more dynamic in that candidates campaign to a majority of voters rather than just a narrow partisan base. So to win, a successful candidate needs to appeal to be the second and third choice of voters who might be ranking their opponent first. This leads to more civil campaigns focused on issues important to voters, something that I think we also saw in New York City, and we'll hear about from Susan. Candidates who positively connect with more voters in their jurisdiction, they do well in this system. That's good for our elections, and frankly, that's good for governance. Finally, ranked choice voting also can strengthen parties. In primaries, RCV allows parties to nominate their strongest potential candidate with majority support instead of a divisive candidate winning with just 20 or 30% of the vote, which we are currently seeing. So there are plenty of examples of ranked choice voting action across the country. But here's why New York City is such a powerful one. This is the third time New Yorkers have used it, and you can really see voters truly embrace the reform. The outcome was decisive and reflected a true majority of voters. We'll hear from our panelists on how the reform is changing the way that candidates campaign for the better. New York City also provides an example of the strongest candidate winning. RCV doesn't benefit progressives or conservatives, just the candidate with the broadest and deepest voter support. We also saw how voter engagement and buy-in increases with ranked choice voting, giving voters more choice and more voice. So in an 11-candidate mayoral field, 95% of New York City voters weighed in between the top two candidates, Zoran Mamdani and Andrew Cuomo. That includes about 160,000 voters who ranked someone else first, but had the option and still expressed the preference between Mamdani and Cuomo on their ballot. I just want to close the opening remarks by noting some poll data from Survey USA that we were honored to work on with Common Cause New York after the New York City primary. 96% of New York City voters say their ballot was simple to complete, including 94% of voters across each racial group surveyed. 76% of New York City voters said they want to keep or expand ranked choice voting in the Big Apple, and 81% say they understand RCV extremely well or very well. with only 3% saying that they didn't understand it somewhat well. This is what we see across the nation, and the evidence base is clear. We're sitting on about 20 years of evidence spanning 800 RCV elections here in the United States. Everywhere ranked choice voting is used, voters say they understand it, they like it, and they want to continue using it. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists here today. I'll start with Lisa Rice, who is a native Washingtonian and the CEO of Grow Democracy DC. She was the proposer of Initiative 83, which won by a supermajority. Yes, I would say yes. He was a proposer of I-83, which won by a supermajority across all 8 wards here in Washington, D.C., with his proposal for ranked choice voting and semi-open primaries for implementation in 2026. Funding for RCV was approved by the D.C. City Council just last week, and we are looking for the council to approve funding for semi-open primaries on July 28th and fulfill voter will there as well. We also have Susan Lerner, who is the Executive Director of Common Cause New York. She's been at Common Cause since 2007 and was the Executive Director of the California Clean Money Campaign before that. As a member of the New York and California bars, she is a litigator and has been one for almost 20 years. But I know Susan as the driving force behind RCV implementation in New York City, and she's just an amazing leader to hear from and to learn from here today. And then we're also joined by Ebonie Simpson, who is the Executive Director of The New Majority New York City, an organization dedicated to building political power for women in New York City. Previously, she served in various roles at the Lower East Side Girls Club of New York, including as co-executive director from 2020 to 2023, and also worked as an associate director in the New York City Mayor's office. But I think also this is the woman that is behind New York City Council being majority female in its representation. So I'm just truly honored to have these 3 fine leaders and reformers here with us today. So let's get started. We're going to have a couple of question and answers. At the end, we would love to have this be very interactive. So please note your questions, any way that we can be helpful in sharing with you whether it's the evidence base or the experience of candidates and voters with ranked choice voting elections. That's what we're here for. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and start with Susan. The first question going to you. So in New York City, we saw competitors endorse each other. We saw organizations encouraging voters to rank their ballots. We saw mangled lassies used for voter education. Like, tell us, what happened here?
Well, this doesn't just spontaneously happen. First of all, Meredith, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for putting this briefing together. The 2025 New York City primary was very much the culmination of work that a lot of us have been doing since ranked choice voting was adopted by New York City's voters in 2029 and used for the first time in 2021 for a mayoral race and then in 2023 for city council races. So we've had some experience and we've had some opportunity to build a broad coalition. We lead Rank the Vote NYC, which is a coalition of over 50 diverse on-the-ground organizations that talk every single day to voters in different communities and in different languages. But also through Rank the Vote NYC, we are lucky enough to be able to train candidates and campaigns on how to run a ranked choice voting campaign. So we started at the beginning of the year offering free trainings to all of the candidates, all of the campaigns, and also working with the endorsing organizations. One of our disappointments in 2021 was that we worked with a lot of candidates. We saw a lot of cross endorsements in the lower races between council candidates, between comptroller and public advocate candidates, but not for the mayoral candidates. And we did not see a lot of organizations that ranked their endorsements, because really any form of information that the voter gets really needs to help them understand ranked choice voting and encourage them to use the full power of their vote, which is what ranking does. As Meredith said, it gives the voter more choice and more voice. So any way in which we can communicate with voters, we need to do so. And candidates and campaigns talk to voters every single day. So really helping the campaigns understand the transition from a traditional first past the post race to an RCV race is essential, and getting the endorsing organizations, as many more of them did in 2025, to also rank their endorsements sends a strong message to the voters. If you're running a typical first past the post campaign, you are training your people actually who not to talk to. You're making phone calls, you're knocking on doors if you're a volunteer, and you ask the voter, I'm here as a representative of John Doe. What do you think of John Doe? And the voter says, I'm voting for Jane Roe. In a traditional campaign, that is the end of the discussion. It's marked down on the sheet, this is a no voter, and you don't need to go back to them. In an RCV race, that is the beginning of the conversation, because that is a starter to ask, well, that's great. I'm really glad that you are informed about your choice. What is it you like about John Doe's positions? What's important to you? And the voter says, well, I really like John's housing policies. Well, Jane's policies are actually really similar, says the campaign worker. Can I give you some information about Jane's policy positions? And by the way, we have a ranked choice voting election. Would you consider, I'm not asking you to change your number one vote. I see you're an informed voter, you've made up your mind, but would you consider ranking Jane 2 or 3? Take a look at her policies. I think you'll find a lot that you like there. That's a different experience and a different connection. Two things have happened. One, you've made a connection with the voter about ranked choice voting. And I've heard candidates, actually elected, complain, oh, we had to inform voters about RCV. No, you were lucky to inform voters about RCV because you provided them with information that was valuable, and you created a positive impression of your campaign and your candidate because you were giving them something they could use. And you were also highlighting issues, and you were building a coalition politics instead of a divisive politics. And what we've seen in New York City is voters really respond to that. When there are ads where candidates are appearing together and saying good things or funny things about each other instead of savaging each other, the voters overwhelmingly respond. And that's really a great prelude to how you have to govern. As you know in this room, it can't all be divisive. It can't all be accusations. In order to get something done in government, you have to be able to build a consensus and build a coalition. And RCV emphasizes those qualities in the strong candidates, who also, as Meredith pointed out, can't just talk to the base. Many of our community partners have told us that under RCV, for the first time, their communities are getting outreach from candidates who have never bothered to come and talk to them directly. This is a positive for our democracy, and it's a positive for governance, because that candidate, if they're successful, comes into office with a much better idea of the full range of concerns and problems that the jurisdiction they want to serve actually is facing, and is a better listener, and we hope a better effective representative. So we believe RCV has a lot of value, and it's been a really fascinating journey to really work with candidates. We started in April, suggesting to various candidates and endorsers, wouldn't it be great if candidates were cross-endorsing? It takes some time for candidates to get there, but happily, a really significant number, and of course, 2 top candidates got there, and that, again, is a strong message to voters. We want to work for you in a collaborative way. We want to build coalitions and get things done and not just tear each other down.
That's a really beautiful thing, Susan, and also just to watch the tenor of the campaign shift as the candidates were reaching out to a multitude of different voters and then finding commonalities around issues of affordability, for example, and they would campaign together on these issues. And that's, again, the political consensus building that you speak to as well. How many of you have actually volunteered for a political campaign where you're knocking on doors? Show of hands.
Because you know what we're talking about. You know how you check them off and you're on to the next.
That's right. You go into a neighborhood and maybe you're knocking on just a handful of doors in that neighborhood. Now reimagine you're knocking on every door and you're engaging every voter on the issues. in a very positive way. It's a transformative way of politicking. But it's not just the nature of the campaigns that change, it's also the calculus of who runs for office, right? So Ebonie, I'd love to shift to you. Since ranked choice voting has been introduced in New York City, have we seen demographic changes in who runs and who wins in these elections?
Yeah, absolutely. Like 100%. Yeah, New York City in 2021 was the first election year that we implemented ranked choice voting after it was voted in as a ballot initiative. And it was a really opportune moment for New York City. New York City has 51 council seats, and they all can serve up to 2 terms of 4 years. In some cases, a little tricky because of redistricting, but typically it's an 8-year maximum, 2-year term, and you can run again after a 2-year consecutive term. It's a little complicated. But all that to say, in 2017, 18, we knew that about 40 of the current seats in the city council were going to be open, meaning that the candidates, the current council members, were term limited and could not run again. And the one thing that was very clear historically was that there was always a very small percentage of women who were in the city council. And New York City is an incredibly diverse city, right? And in various colors and shapes and religions. And our council just wasn't representative of that. And so there was a huge movement to try to get more women into the city council. And so there was a campaign called 21 and 21 to get at least 21 women elected into the city council by 2021. And it was serendipitous that the campaign that Susan and others had been working so hard on with ranked choice voting came into effect around the time that this campaign started. And it was incredibly fundamentally shifting into the question about who was running. Obviously, there was a big movement to recruit, right? We wanted to recruit as many people of color, women in general. But the significant turning point was the fact that we could message ranked choice voting as a strategy for them to be successful. And it really culminated in a significant number of women running for these open seats. We had almost 100 women run in those seats. And out of the 51 seats that were, well, not all 51 were up for grabs, but of the 51 seats, 31 seats were elected with women representatives in 2021. So we exceeded our goal of getting 21, which is not even a majority. We were trying to just get an inch closer, right? But we exceeded that goal, and now over 60% of our council is not just representative of women, but representative of women of all shapes and colors and religions. It is the most diverse city council in New York City's history. The first Black woman is now the Speaker of the City Council. There's only been 3 women speakers of the City Council in history, and this has become another historic moment. And as of this election cycle, this primary, we're looking to hold on to that majority. And I know that it's because of ranked choice voting. Not only is it that candidates, are be able to feel more comfortable running because there's an opportunity for them to really share a message in a broader way, all the things that Susan just shared. It's the viability question that becomes a big issue in regular elections. It's who am I running against? Am I splitting the vote? If there's another woman running or another person of color running. There's all these dynamics that come up when you have a traditional voting system that ranked choice voting relinquishes and allows candidates to feel comfortable being collaborative, comfortable cross-endorsing, coming together in their messaging. And again, it allows them to have a broader base of potential voters. They're campaigning to everyone, not just to the ones they may think will vote for them based on their demographics or their voting patterns, but they have no choice but to engage as many people as possible. And I think that has been proven to be advantageous for women candidates in particular, because we already know how difficult it is statistically. It takes, 7 times for a woman to be convinced to run for office. These type of systems create more space and opportunity for people to have the viability that they seek, and it's proven to be, again, incredibly successful in New York. And without ranked choice voting, I don't believe we would have hit the goal that we did hit, for all the reasons that were shared previously. And I think it's shifting the way that New York City sees political leadership overall. Once you see women, once you see more people of color in these positions, it becomes more real, right? And more, likely to be repeated and become the norm. And that's always our goal at the New Majority, is to ensure that we maintain our majority and that we actually get to a place where New York City actually has a woman mayor for the first time in history, which is insane, that we don't have that yet. We came close in 2021. We had 2 women who were of the 3 candidates, top 2 were women, and
If they'd cross indoors.
they had crossed in doors, and that's the thing, like Susan said, like that has been a significant increase. I think everything Susan said, I just echo. When it comes to being a voter myself, I was actually one of the 160,000 who didn't vote for the top 2 candidates, and my vote, but I still ranked, and I was able to have my voice heard, even though that wasn't my top candidate. And that means so much to me as a voter, as an individual. And I think that's the case for a lot of New Yorkers. They just feel that their voice matters, their vote matters more than a typical top 2 or whatever kind of proposals are going around now. So yeah, I'll stop there, and I'm happy to answer more questions about our experience in New York, but it's proven to be an incredible case study of how effective it can be, not just for women, but for people of color, and for other marginalized groups that just don't feel they have the access or the ability to run for these competitive seats. Yeah, you see more humanity from the candidates, I feel.
Yeah.
It's a fair representation of the voters that make up
Exactly.
a constituency, and New York City has been a real light for us, but you see it across diverse states and other cities as well. So in the Bay Area, for example, since ranked choice voting has been enacted in cities there, we've seen a 35% increase in the number of Latinos elected to represent their communities. I was born and raised in Alaska, and there we see more independents, more women, more Native representation in that state, and a more collaborative politics. We don't agree on a lot, but we focus on what we can agree on, and we make progress because we know we need to keep majority support of our voters to win and keep that seat of power. And that's a very powerful political incentive.
And voters have told us in the exit polling that they actually spent a little bit more time finding out about more candidates.
Exactly.
That's an incentive for the voter to be more engaged. And rather than saying, oh, it was a hassle and I had to find out about more people, voters said to us, this was really interesting because I knew that the value judgment I was making was important because I was going to rank. So I wasn't wasting my time doing that research. I was making a decision for myself.
That's exactly right. And I want to bring in Lisa Rice now. Lisa, you have just won an amazing victory with the DC Council. Literally, it was July 14th. Did I get it right? Like emblazoned in our minds.
Emblazoned.
Yes. And so that will enact RCV here in DC next year in 2026. Yes. I wonder if you could share with us how the recent New York City race looks from your perspective, and what do you see or hope for DC with RCV and semi-open primaries coming to the nation's capital?
Yeah, thanks, Meredith. I'm happy to be here, and thank you both so much for coming to my hometown. So I am a native Washingtonian, so I have a lot at stake here. Born and raised here, and actually live in my childhood home. So, and former elected official here, so I have a lot of skin in the game here in DC. And I will say, I'll confess, I was hyper-focused on DC, not too much on what was happening in that race. Although you could not, you couldn't go to sleep and look at social media without seeing this is what's happening in that campaign. Yeah. The thing that I really enjoyed most of what I saw of the New York City race was the cross endorsements, the collaboration, the very creative campaigning. I saw things that were on TikTok, I saw things that were on Instagram, and I think that those are ways of campaigning that, not just because it's ranked choice voting, but because it brings in younger people who are looking at and they're consuming their information through more instantaneous means than, when I grew up, I read a paper. I don't know if you guys have seen papers. I don't know. I mean, most people now just scroll on a screen. But I think that is one of the things that really enticed me about seeing how the candidates were working to get voters into the discussion and really enlighten voters on where they stand, what their positions were, and how I'm almost like this person. If you don't like me as your number one, please put me as your number two, or this, and that cross campaigning, I think, is really the best part of that I saw from the outside looking in. I don't know what it was like to be there, but it was very entertaining. It was very entertaining. And it gives me hope for DC because many times we have contested primaries, and because DC is a blue bubble and the primary is the only race that mattered for all but 2 offices in the city, the primary sometimes is so fractured in DC that we have people that are winning with less than 30% of the vote, less than 25% of the vote. So we have someone sitting on our council right now that in the primary back in June of last year got less than 3,000 votes. That is insane. That is absolutely insane. And so my hope is that when we have ranked choice voting, we will be sending people into office that are supported by the majority. And what we see, and I'm going to bring it around to the mini campaigning, the lobbying that I've been doing to get ranked choice voting funded and semi-open primaries funded. It wasn't just winning at the ballot in November with 73% of the vote. I've been lobbying for the past few weeks to get this funded, and I'm speaking to my own member of the council, who was the person that got in with 2,900 votes. His response to me is, I don't believe in it. I don't give a shit you don't believe in it. 73% of voters voted for it. You should be supporting it. We have someone on the council who is not supporting 73% of voters, and in my ward, in his ward, I believe the tally was 68, 69% of the vote, something like that. So we're not talking like this ward didn't believe in Initiative 83. But we have people, that's got to change. It's got to change.
But that's people who are afraid of actually talking to voters, in my experience. Okay?
Exactly.
Because if you can raise a lot of money and put a big ad up and send a lot of mailers, and we had the classic contrast in New York, right? So you had one candidate who was personable and was working overtime to talk personally to as many voters as he could, either on the street or through social media. And you had a very standard candidate who believed that if he had a lot of money and sent mailers and ran some TV ads and didn't talk to people and didn't even bother to talk to the press, that his name recognition would carry.
Right.
And so he did not run a ranked choice voting campaign at all. He was like, I'm the guy, you vote for me, number one, you ignore all of these peasants. Well, we see how that played out. His personable opponent was the leader in the first round, and he conceded on election night, which frankly does not happen that often with a ranked choice.
Right. I was surprised at that.
Well, because he knew he had no number twos. He didn't ask anybody to rank him.
Right.
So the handwriting was on the wall.
Yeah.
And instead of Mamdani getting the nomination with 43% of the vote, which isn't shabby, but after the ranking, saving us, if it had been a runoff, $11 million plus dollars, he won with 52% of the vote, which is so much stronger than even a 43%
Right.
showing. So again, it's an object lesson in so many different ways. What the candidate who tells people don't bother to rank me, I'm the best, we call them a loser.
Well, I will say one of the ways that we ran our campaign for Initiative 83 is we had a really solid ground game, and we knocked on doors.
There you go.
People, there was one, I will never forget this story. It was a gentleman who lived in a condo building who had been living there for 30 years. He said, I've been living here for 30 years. You're the first campaign that's ever knocked on my door. I was like, well, hopefully we're not the last.
Yeah.
But what I say to politicians who are hesitant about a new system, I say, use our campaign as a blueprint. We were in every ward. We went out, we talked to super voters. How did we prioritize? We talked to super voters first. That meant our seniors, our community engagement person. All the seniors across town know her. You know, oh, there's Kenyatta. We know Kenyatta. You know, and we used social media. We had an influencer who is, you know, under the age of 30. I mean, we just going out to all the people, not being safe. You know, we have these folks on our council that are elected by what I call a sliver of a vote, and they go to their tried and true base. But those days are over. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's really great. Fun thing in the 2021 education campaign, we were trying to explain to campaigns what a cross endorsement would look like. And we were lucky that we were working with some activists from Oakland, which has had RCV for a while. And they shared with us a TV commercial that was 3 women running for, I think it was the city auditor, right? That's accounting, for crying out loud. and they were cross endorsing. And each one in the ad said, I like her because her accounting is really great. And then I like her because her numerosity is really high, and they were complimenting each other. And when I looked around the room, people were like, oh my God, can we do this? And in 2025, they did.
No, that's right. We have a mayoral campaign happening in the Twin Cities right now, and literally just a couple of days ago, they had a candidate forum, and the panelists said, this is a ranked choice voting election. Here are the candidates running for this race. Now, Candidate A, I want you to tell me one thing that you like or agree with about about your opponents. And they started off that campaign panel in that way. It's a really transformative way of focusing on issues that are important to voters, and then reaching and engaging their voters at a time when 88% of Americans across all political backgrounds say their politics isn't working for them, and 85% of Americans, again, across all backgrounds, saying that their elected officials either don't know or don't need to care about what they think. So the evidence base of the heightened levels of voter engagement and turnout, I think also speak well to ranked choice voting and the kind of politics that we're going to see here in DC as well moving forward.
It's going to be transformative.
And truly. So I want to get us to the question, answer, and discussion space. But before we do, I just wanted to turn to our esteemed panelists and ask if we've got this incredible room of Capitol Hill experts and staff who are working with federal legislators. What's your guidance to federal legislators who are considering this reform? Lisa, can we start with you and we'll move this way?
Yeah, I'm going to use a phrase that a lot of activists in D.C. use, hands off D.C. Just let us be. You know?
So
that's it.
So when you're talking with other offices about RCV, there are various myths. Number one, as Ebonie points out, it works for all voters. But most important is not to get caught up in crazy theories about what it's going to do. It's a tool. All of the voter reforms that we advocate for that increase access for candidates, for voters, are tools. And like a hammer, it will work for whoever bothers to learn about it and use it. So Republicans in Utah bother to learn about it and use it, and they are successful with ranked choice voting. A progressive in New York City bothered to learn about it and use it, and he is successful. It's not because the hammer has an ideology. It's because the hammer is a tool. And it has real benefits, as we pointed out, for voters. And so we always talk about this from the voters' perspective. You, of course, are talking to electeds. They have a particular interest. This helps electeds. It gives them a stronger majority, and it's a tool that they can use.
To add to the tool analogy, I would ask folks to think about, what are you building with that hammer? And I hate to be politically philosophical, but I think it's super important in this day, in this time. If we want a more responsive, representative democracy, one in which voters actually have, the ability to hold their elected officials accountable in ways that are not as that are more feasible. I think we've seen many times people come in office, they stay in office because they have name recognition, and they're smooth sailing until they decide to retire. And ranked choice shakes it up, and I think that is a threat to some folks. But it's important that folks remember that they are accountable to their constituents. And that is what real democracy looks like. And so when I think about what you're saying, I'm also thinking about, okay, what are we trying to build? We're trying to build, in my opinion, a more representative, inclusive democracy in which voters' voices really do matter. And I think, if federal legislators are interested in that, I know that can be up for debate, then that is a really important kind of ideological element to the argument, besides the practical elements as well. It's about the kind of existential moment that we're in, and thinking about the real tools that we have at our disposal to ensure that we maintain that, like Lisa's trying to do in her city, and I think other municipalities and states are trying to do, is ensure that they have that autonomy and that real voice and representation. And ranked choice voting is, I think, one of the most important tools to utilize to build that.
Yeah, it revitalizes political parties and ties political parties closer to the needs of their voters, so that they're representing and responding to them. And that's really been exciting. This is also an exciting week for ranked choice voting. We have one piece of legislation that's being introduced this week, and a second one that will be introduced a little bit later on in late summer. So that second one, and both Representative Raskin and Representative Beyer are co-sponsors of these legislations, and are looking for other co-sponsors to join them. So the Ranked Choice Voting Act, which I believe will be introduced a little bit late summer, would implement RCV for all U.S. House and Senate elections. This week, we are introducing the Fair Representation Act, which would also implement RCV for U.S. House and Senate elections, but would go a step further to stop gerrymandering and to make every congressional election competitive. So instead of our current single-member House districts, the Fair Representation Act would implement 3 or 5-member House districts. And when RCV is used in multi-member districts, it's a form of proportional representation. So this means that candidates are elected in proportion to their share of the vote. This is how most democracies work, and giving voters their fair share of power. So the FRA is currently the only bill to implement proportional representation in Congress. And with the Fair Representation Act, tens of millions more voters would have a member of Congress who represents their interests. We have representatives from both parties in every district. So giving representation to political minorities like urban Republicans in New York City and rural Democrats, perhaps. It would also mean greater representation for racial minorities and women. We have an evidence base on the Fair Representation Act and what proportional representation would do that shows that gerrymandering would become nearly impossible if we implemented multi-member districts. And as we've heard today, elected officials will just have different incentives. Every district would have competitive general elections, and members of different parties would have to serve the same district and have that incentive to work together. So with that, I want to thank Lisa, Susan, and Ebonie for spending time with us today.